right, and right now it is Friday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, Mr. Kidda.
Happy Valentine's Day to you, sir.
I celebrated this morning with frozen pipes at my house.
Oh no! How cold is it in Minnie?
14 below zero.
It's cold here, so usually it's a lot colder there.
I have an older house. I've been fighting battles. Interestingly enough, there is a company out there, which I will not name names. You can go search for it yourself. That actually lets you put, instead of plumbing inline, you can put it in a single faucet, and single faucet, like in the hot and cold lines, and it will detect the resonance of leaking water, the unique harmonic from each fixture, and the resonance of water leakage, as well as the resonance of ice crystals forming throughout your plumbing.
And it'll get what? You'll get like a text message?
Yeah, you get an IoT alert when your pipes start to freeze, so you can like run water or do whatever it is.
Excellent.
I am definitely going to make an investment, and if it works, I'll do it on I'll tweet out something from my personal Twitter side. I won't call it out on the show, but I went digging because I was like, I know last year this happened to me, and I was fighting the battle and running the water. I'm like, there's got to be a better way to make this magic happen, and maybe there is. A little IoT enablement of water faucets and frozen pipes to start your morning on, and then I can launch a flow, which will schedule me for a appointment to turn on my. I mean, I can.
I'm sorry that happened to you, Doug.
Yeah, it's all right. It's not thawed out yet either. So it's still like 13 below or some ridiculous thing. It's supposed to be like 30 something this weekend. So hopefully wherever you are, there's not frozen pipes.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get going on stuff. I got just a couple of things: security, a reminder on the Teams app catalog, and a little surfacing of some, and a reminder of an awesome resource over on the SharePoint Intranet Zone. So light week for news, which I think is totally okay.
I've got a bit of a hodgepodge. I got some like core office stuff, got some flow, got some AI builder, and some cool Power BI stuff.
Yeah, I went to paste the XLOOKUP thing and saw you'd grab that one as well. So Todd and I kind of do this asynchronously, and
be fun.
Yeah, so I was like, ooh, that's a good one. So we have that one I guess is shared love, but for both sides of it. Next few weeks, I'm going to be starting a brief series on how you should be aggregating logs into your SIM, whether that's Sentinel or something else, like the signals that we commonly see people missing, because I've done some log reviews recently with people, and I can't get in front of everyone.
Right.
So I'm going to do a little series on, kind of how the log pipeline should work and what your options are, and then what our standards and recommendations are, and where we're storing those around what events you should be receiving and handling. So that's going to be on a go forward basis. So if you're looking for some more security guidance, we're going to be doing that in a little series coming up here. But today I wanted to cold open with something that might not seem collaborative, but let's cut full screen on this because I think this is really important. As an example of our commitment to security inside of Azure, we just achieved NERC SIP certification, right? So this is the SIP standard for critical infrastructure. And essentially what it allows you to do is to do high-end NERC energy workloads within Azure. All right, so let's cut back. So Azure is the foundational cloud that we run our other stuff on top of. So until it gets an attestation, nothing else above it can possibly be used for that.
Yep.
Sometimes higher level SaaS services can never be used for that. I guess an example would be like, it's highly unlikely, I never say never, right? But I think it's extraordinarily unlikely you will ever see PCI compliance in an Exchange mailbox. Or payment card industry. Because if you want to be PCI compliant, you have to store the data in an encrypted format, check kinda, and then you have to like trace every time it got read and who read it and what the purpose was. There's a whole bunch of rules around auditing of the transaction. Well, I mean, every time you searched your mailbox for a keyword and the crawler went through, we potentially have to do an audit entry around the data. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Depending on what your interpretive are, and you would never do that in your mailbox. Now you can take like an encrypted wrapper and then put the data in that and then store it in Office 365, right? So there's other ways to do that. But the foundational cloud attestations are really important. I cannot tell you, because I have a background in security, how hard it is to hit something like this. The words elude me. I was blown away that we achieved NERC SIP compliance in Azure.
Do we need to define any of these terms for our non-security?
I mean, it's the energy reliability, it's the critical infrastructure, essentially designed to protect power grid stuff.
Got it.
Okay. it's high security, high compliancy. It's just a high level of attestation, operational excellence to be able to do this.
That's awesome.
And I know in some cases this is buzzword bingo. Maybe you don't care, maybe you do, but I'm telling you that this is it's a big deal, and it talks about exactly what we did on top of it if you drill in and everything else, and it's simply just another example of us walking through and spending a lot of time on something that you need to have happen before you can go do amazing innovation.
Right.
We were showing people this week. You have it up and running too. We have this knowledge wall that was built jointly by Todd Van Nern from my team and Brian on yours, right?
Yep. And
you basically just write something on a piece of paper, toss it in front of the camera, and this octagonal wall. It's on LinkedIn. I think it's from Brian's LinkedIn feed, right?
Yep, that's right.
It goes out, it finds all this imagery and everything else. And one of my friends, Greg Costick, was in town, so we wrote Peach Cobbler on the thing because of a long-running joke we have about speech recognition, and tossed it out, and up comes all these images of Peach Cobbler. And so it's just an example of how to use AI. And so there's all these amazingly approachable and usable APIs, but you can't do any of them if the underlying attestation of the environment doesn't allow you to do it. So this kind of boring stuff means that those really critical industries will start getting access to the killer tech that exists on the normal commercial side.
That's awesome.
So I'm just excited about it because it's another advanced standard, and I think you should know that as you need to pay a little attention to that in the compliance and attestation portal to make sure that as new things come up, you might get unblocked from using things as time goes by.
Yep. Something that you couldn't do a year ago, maybe you can do now.
That is correct. On top of it. So I'm going to pop around over to here and come over to one that we haven't visited for a while, and we're going to be doing some workshops on this in Mini, and that's app templates for Teams. This is more of an in case you missed it, but have you looked at the catalog of app templates for Teams recently?
Scrum like mad.
It's a lot, and the development of things on Teams is not, terribly. I think about Power Apps and their ability to, to have things within apps presented within Teams. Teams is an application platform, application delivery and accessibility platform, contextually aligned, is growing like gangbusters.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I had an opportunity the other day. I was going through some reviews with different account teams, support customers, or whatever it was, and I was just going through looking at customers with customers, their utilization of services. Never seen anything like the Teams growth. Crazy. Like real world active use. I don't know, a bunch of the customers were seeing like 22 days per month of active use.
Oh my gosh.
Per employee average. 22 days active use.
When I see people coming through and I talk to people about their Teams usage, it's either they're using it and they're enjoying it. They're actually appreciating the value they're getting out of it, or they haven't got it yet and they're impatient.
Yeah.
They really want it, right?
So let's cut to this and go through these templates real quick, and then I got one more quick thing, and then I'm handing it over to you for the rest of the show. Okay. So what are the goals behind the app templates? First, they are a plug and play, right? They have the deployment scripts. You're ready to go. And to allow you to host the services in Azure, no coding is required to deploy these solutions, right? They are production ready code, which contain best practices around security. You can extend them and play with them and add to them, which is an awesome way to start learning. Develop. My favorite thing is to start with something that people wrote that does what I want to do and deconstruct it and play, right? On top of it. And there actually are documentations on these things. The repos are monitored in GitHub, so it's actually well done, right? And so let's break down what they have. They have celebrations, which is a team app that lets people celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, other recurring events, which means you got to want to store them in there, right? So there's a little consent around that. So you can personally add and view their events, and allows you to select which teams the events get shared, so you can have that.
That's awesome.
Celebrations, kind of a cool one, right? There's the company communicator, which allows corporate teams to create and send messages for multiple teams or large numbers over chat to get people right where they go at. So it's essentially a broadcast tool, right? So, hey, here's your security advisory for New Year's Eve, celebrate, but with care. So we have this really cool broadcast application on top of it.
Can I ask you a question on that one real quick?
Of course you can.
Because we were having a conversation yesterday about what, with an external customer, about like how we're using email versus Teams and those kinds of things. And one of the examples we talked about was this large scale broadcast capability. If like Satya wants to email Microsoft, he's probably gonna do it in email, right? Not through Teams. I mean, do you see potentially something there where?
Yes, I do. Okay. I think that people are replacing Because here's the problem with email is that it all comes into clutter in one giant stream of consciousness, right?
Yep. One big pile.
And we've talked about this before. Well, there are two kinds of people. There's pilers or filers.
Yep.
Right? And there's people who clean their inbox and people who skim their inbox and color code it looking for things that are relevant to them. Just because of the sheer mass of notifications and external services, it quickly becomes white noise.
Oh yeah.
And the differentiation around teams in many ways is that filers often have an email advantage because their work habits and behaviors lead to some organization around the structure, correct?
Yep.
Whereas pilers, which is over 50% of the workforce, stylistically, according to most of the stats I see. So the majority of us live in a little more of piles, right? Okay, but even if it's 50-50, by dropping an email in, I once had a customer get really irritated at me. Remember the old feature we had called clutter, which you've merged and evolved into focused inbox. And clutter, we would never call our valued coworkers' emails spam, but we might call them clutter.
Sure.
And one of my customers got quite irritated that clutter, which turned on, was turned on the tenant, and started moving their senior executive correspondence into the clutter folder.
Yep.
And they were like, well, there's a huge problem here. You need to turn it off, or I need to whitelist my senior executives so they don't go into clutter. I'm like, clutter was an intelligent algorithm that predicted your behavior. So it means people were not looking at that message. Moving it back into the inbox, it's not going to change your read percentage.
Yep.
It's going into a place that's noisy. And so how do you help solve that? Well, the answer is you put it contextually where people go. Right. So people who say Teams has some, have a high volume might be true, but you can pop in contextually to like the MTC, community, to our Office Flash Friday team, and you and I can have a conversation or a quick organized activity around the show we produce, right? With the producers and the people who cooperate around. So if we want to have a discussion around, I don't have to then de-thread my inbox finding which things were related to Office Flash Friday.
Right.
So an announcement, if you were like a field employee and you had an email, whereas if you had an announcement that went to like every, I don't know, let's pick hospitality. You got a whole bunch of hotels. So you want the CEO's announcement to go to where people live.
Yep.
This lets you do that.
It's awesome.
So this capability exists at an API level. It just shows you how to expose that and, everything else.
Cool.
FAQ Plus is really cool because it's a bot driven around the FAQ. And, we had the Q&A maker that we've shown you out there. You go up, give it your list. It says, but hey, most bots fail to engage with users when a human is unable to help. You can ask the bot in response to answer if it's in the knowledge base. If not, it allows the user to submit that gets posted to a pre-configured team of experts who are available to help.
That is awesome.
So, yes. So it's kind of like automation plus extension out to an expert community.
Yep.
Little ACD type stuff for the contact center people out there. Automated call distribution, a little workload vibe going on. HR support is a Q&A pot for specifically targeted towards human resources scenarios. Mm-hmm. So you can put in, like employee referrals and kind of do a little lightweight management of things on top of it. There's the one that I highlighted a while back, but I still love this thing. It is that it says, hey, teams often have lists. Well, it lets you search lists. So you can get a list search back from a content search.
Okay.
So there's some cool stuff on top of that. There is the custom stickers messaging extension. So if you'd like to kind of get some custom stickers going on top of it, you can get around that. IceBreaker, which is one of my absolute favorite ones. Have you used this at all or no?
Yes, it's good. Yep.
It's really good. And so IceBreaker picks 2 random team members each week and pairs them up to meet. It automatically suggests free times that work for both members. And the goal is to get people just cross-talking.
That's awesome.
Hey, you look available, and you two should talk. And it says, hey, it's time for a match, and you can go ahead and then come in and tweak the language, from the source code standpoint. There's a Scrum status bot for people who want to do Scrum tracking, who don't maybe have another tool on top of it, or would like a lightweight one for it. And there's the crowdsourcer team bot, which essentially gets crowdsourced information to contribute back in from information. So and finally,
a mechanical Turk for Teams. Okay.
That's a really good analogy. And you're pretty good at this. There's the expert finder bot, which does on their skills, interests, and it does keyword search of the Azure AD user profile, which of course is contributed to by your skills contributions and everything else. And there's the Booker Room bot, which lets you find conference rooms that are available, which is like awesome. And then you could extend that that solution with additional data around room facilities, like projectors, video conferencing. So if you did a little bit of extension on top of that,
Sure.
like, oh, is there a conference room in building 24? Yep, here you go. Here's the ones available.
I've heard this one a lot. Yep, that's great.
Yeah, so that one's really cool. And then there's the attendance application that records presence in for learning and training environments. So if you have people, you have a training class you want to have people show up for, and you want to give them credit for attending that training class. Have you read the paper sign up form that gets handed around the room?
Yep.
Like, hey, Todd, you have to do your compliance training. So you had to be there on Friday, and everyone signs their name and puts their alias in or something like that so that you can get credit for it. Well, hello. How about we go a little more modern on top of it? And then maybe you could also do polls and other things during the training in there, right? So my point is this. This is just a smattering of things that are entirely delivered to you, ready to go and code-free as they are. You can tweak them, extend them, mess around with them as much as you want to do.
Well, I love that, again, we're doing this out on GitHub for issue submission and all of that.
Yep, that's it. And so I got one more quick thing and then over to you. So if you have not been out to the SharePoint blogs lately and looked at the SharePoint patterns and practices community, you should, because there's a whole bunch of really, really highly relevant content out there around current state of SharePoint, the FX web parts, extensions, the plug and play stuff. There's a lot of net new content around SharePoint out there. And I do think people should start to sharpen their saw around SharePoint patterns and practices because of Project Cortex rolling towards us.
Yep.
And so if you haven't spent your time sharpening up your SharePoint patterns and practices and looking at your managed metadata and starting to get thoughts around where you're going to head with that, all those things are going to contribute to Cortex readiness. So, and everyone's going to want that when it rolls. So just a little forward looking, go check this out.
Love it.
That is it for me. Over to you, sir.
All right. Well, Doug, all the X's on everything. We have, we talked a few months back about the new XLOOKUP. So I'm going right into Excel, right? So we're going from SharePoint patterns and practices to specific Excel formulas. So everyone in the world that's used Excel probably knows what VLOOKUP is. We talked a little bit about XLOOKUP that's coming, but now is GA. This is awesome.
Let's go full on this one.
Yeah, you'll never go back and use VLOOKUP again. It accomplishes some of the same goals of VLOOKUP, but it does all the things that everyone had to do manually before when using VLOOKUP. So I'm going to hop. So you can see here that this person is looking up an office to find out who owns that office based on their first name, hitting enter, and we can see that it's John. However, and you'll say, okay, that's a lot like VLOOKUP. But if you go back and look at what this is doing, there's some limitations to what VLOOKUP did. So this makes it really easy to set default or approximate or exact match. One of the things that I did not realize that in VLOOKUP cannot look to the left from a columns perspective. It can only look to the right. So this guy.
Wait, what? Really?
Yeah, exactly. It's super weird. So you actually had to move your columns around in your lookup table in order for VLOOKUP to actually work. And if you wanted to search, find the last item versus the first item, if you wanted to find something that's the next larger item, if you can't find an exact match, these things were very difficult to find and actually get the exact functionality you wanted from a VLOOKUP. So to me, it seems like XLOOKUP is if you're still doing Excel formulas for these types of things, XLOOKUP seems like a no-brainer to go forward with. Personally, I don't spend much time doing VLOOKUPs anymore because largely Power BI gets the job done for a lot of this stuff in Power Query. But this is awesome. I love There's
times when you just need a spreadsheet, Todd.
There's times when you just need a spreadsheet. So XLOOKUP, dude, it's 2020 and we're still delivering innovation and value into Excel. So this is.
Well, I don't think that's going to stop.
No, absolutely.
Cool. I love the AI-driven conclusions they've added and all this stuff. Great.
That's awesome. XLOOKUP is where it's at. Adopt it. All right. This one is exciting. This is another one we talked about a while back, but is now coming to fruition. Is this idea of using child flows inside of Power Automate. This is a really powerful feature which enables you to do a couple different things. So the first thing that came to my mind when I heard about this is the ability to do state machine workflows, right? So meaning I can move from one state to another, and my child flows could represent my various different states, because I would be able to hop around and encapsulate that that functionality and capability right inside these child flows. The other thing that allows you to do is to standardize. So if you have some parent flows that are interacting with, let's say, a SharePoint library, a couple different SharePoint libraries in different ways, but you want to standardize the way that you do approvals or standardize the way that you do publishing of content. You could use these child flows, and the parent flows can just reuse these. So it enables reusability. So this blog post is a great set of tips that make sure that you're doing this right. So for example, some of the things that you have to be aware of is that to enable a child flow, the first trigger on a child flow needs to be a button, the button trigger, which we're all familiar with, and we've been doing flows in Power Automate, but that enables it to be a child flow in another from a parent flow. You have to have it in a solution, otherwise it will not work. You have to have embedded connections. So these are the embedded connections. So those are the things that you have to watch out for to make sure that when you go into your parent flow to call your child flow, that it will show up, that it will function as expected to use this powerful new feature. So I'm pretty excited about this one. This one goes through a couple different examples and scenarios. But in my mind, those are the two that really jumped out at me, is this idea of I can do state machines as well as standardization and reuse of the logic in these child flows. So definitely go check that out. Yeah, pretty cool. AI Builder. This one is a couple really important enhancements when you're doing auto machine learning. So the two big features that are being added here are related entities in CDS for training and being able to filter. So why is that important if I'm doing automatic machine learning? Well, the blog post walks through a really nice example of they want to be able to predict when orders in a particular country are going to be delayed, okay? So in order to do that, I have to know in what country the delivery address is. So that's maybe a related entity off my common data service. So that gives me that's where related entities come in. And if I want to also train on data only in a particular country, that's where the filtering comes in. So this is a really good example of doing automatic machine learning, of finding out if my delivery was either early, on time, or late, going through and predicting that timeliness, and then filtering to, I think this is Sao Paulo, right? So where state equals SP. And then I have a machine learning model that I can deploy and use inside of my applications that will predict the lateness or on timeness of my order, and then maybe automatically apply expedited shipping based on that status field. So you can see the machine learning actually affecting the business outcome here, and all this was all done with no code by the user through the AI builder inside of the common data service and inside the tools. So this is a very cool scenario. I think people are just starting to kind of wake up to the possibilities here. So you can see this would be the outcome here. This is a upgraded express delivery over here because we're predicting it's going to be late, and that just all happens automatically. That I can put a flow in front of that, surface it up through Dynamics, and off you go. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right.
That is cool.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to hop over to Power BI. I won't spend too much time on this one. We're proud of this every year. It's that time of year again, believe it or not, when the Magic Quadrant comes out, and once again we're up at the top right. I think for very deservedly so, we've been working very hard over the last few years. This is our 13th year that we've been in a leader quadrant inside of.
Yeah, let's go full screen on that one for a moment. So I like it when blog posts like that come out, right?
I mean, this one kind of just speaks for itself. We have some very tough competitors, and we have some really cool capabilities that have been coming out over the last couple of years, and we have a really, really, really robust pipeline of stuff in the roadmap. So, I mean, if you're using Power BI, you've probably experienced some of these things already. It's just, like to celebrate that a little bit. So
yep, it's I mean, essentially the reason we love that is because it really breaks it down to say, do you have the ability to execute, and do you have a good vision?
Yep. So I don't think we like to dwell on these things too long because we're always trying to get better. If you go out to the ideas,
they're lagging indicators of the work you did.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And if you go out to like the ideas.powerbi.com, you see there's still plenty of work to do. There's still plenty of things that we need to bring to market to enable our enterprise customers to make it more usable for our end users and to enable bigger, better, faster insights. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, onwards and upwards. This is a just a worthy mention. Upgrade your on-premises gateway for whether using Power Apps Flow or Power BI. The February update is available, so get that published out. And last but not least, this was an exciting one that came out yesterday. We are enabling email subscription support for external email addresses. So this is not just for B2B users. This is literally, if you're an extra, Doug, I want to send you an external report. I am now able to do that via a subscription. So that is, if you think about it, that's very similar to the way that we're doing our anonymous publish to web experience, because these people haven't been authenticated into our directory. And so as such, the same tenant settings will govern whether or not this is possible. So the first thing that needs to be enabled inside of your Power BI admin tenant is the ability to share content with external users. So this is the same thing that enables or disables publish to web as does the publish to external email addresses in subscriptions. And remember, I can turn this on for everybody or for specific security groups, which would probably be the recommended approach, right?
Yep.
So in addition to this one being turned on, there is a new setting, which is email subscriptions as well. So that needs to be turned on as well as this one. If those are both turned on, and you are in the security group, if that's selected, then you can send subscriptions to external users. And of course, you're going to get the yellow flag here that's saying, hey, C. Finland at paginatedbear.com is outside of your domain. FYI, just be aware, and that will show up. When you are creating the subscription, this is important to know, you have the option to send a link inside Power BI. If they click that, and they go in through it, they will be added as a B2B user in AAD. To view that, because otherwise,
that's super. Otherwise, we wouldn't have no audit security principle against which to execute who did it.
That's right.
Yeah,
so,
that would offend me as a security guy. So
that's right. So if you uncheck these, obviously that they won't be added. They'll just be getting the email. Whatever content's in the email is all they'll get, if that makes sense. Okay. So the other thing, Doug, which I'm sure you've already wondered about as I'm going through this, is yes, all of this is audited, right? So inside the Office 365 admin logs, the event of me creating the subscription for external users will be audited, so I can report on that and set up alerts and flows and go check with people to make sure that all this is on the up and up. So that's a good deal too.
Yes, sir.
And then the very last thing here too is for paginated reports, they've removed the limit of 24 subscriptions per report. So it doesn't specify the ceiling. So that implies to me that either that's a very large number or it's some other number, but I don't know what the new ceiling is, but we've removed the limit of 24 for paginated reports only. And it does point out that we're considering removing this as well for other content types. But I would imagine that paginated reports are the ones that people are really after here, because that's where you get a really useful email subscription. So some really good stuff for email subscriptions for paginated and other reports inside Power BI this week. External users, turn it on, audit it, lock it down for those security groups. Again, this has been a conversation that I've been having a lot lately with customers, not really, I guess, grokking all of the admin settings inside the Power BI portal and turning things off like external sharing and those kinds of things. Really important to get in there and make sure that you're assessing the security of your Power BI tenant and making sure those things are locked down per your security posture. So nice. Yeah, well, that's all I have this week, sir. I will not be here next week. I will be in Colorado. So Doug,
I'm off too. We're both on vacation next week, so no show next week.
All right.
We'll be back in 2 weeks for I'm sure, thrilling Office Flash Friday.
Cool. All right. Everybody stay warm. And
yeah.
Weekend. Yeah.
And thaw your pipes if.
Yeah, I was gonna say, get those pipes thawed out.
I don't know, man. And it's one's hot and one's cold, so you got me as to how that happened.
Oh boy.
It's frozen. Yeah. All right, everyone. You have a great weekend. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.